This segment sponsored by the generous support of the Dream Team. Looking for the keys to something bigger and better? Downsizing or relocating to the perfect spot? Oscar Ramirez from Century 21 Lois Lauer Real Estate and Matt Flores from Secure Choice Lending are here to help you sell or buy with their trusted and experienced knowledge and advice. People are calling Oscar and Matt at 951-751-3249. That's 951-751-3249. Real estate and loan advisors Oscar and Matt can give you a no-cost consultation. You don't have to buy anything. Matt and Oscar can help you figure your way through the complicated real estate market. Email Oscar at loislauer.com or on Instagram at Oscar Ramirez Garcia and Matt Flores at securechoicelending.com. Don't let today's real estate pitfalls stop you from dreaming. Make your new home dreams come true. DRE number 0207-0344. Se habla español. The message of Brother Stair lives on here in Southern California on KCAA, Monday through Friday from 1 to 5 a.m. Hear the worldwide broadcast of the Overcomer Ministry from the Faith Cathedral Fellowship. Call for prayer requests or to make a donation at area 843-599-1215. Beginning at 1 a.m. Monday through Friday. Hear it here on KCAA, AM and FM.
With 60 years of fascinating facts, this is the man from yesterday. Back in time we go to this time in 1971. CBS TV is launching In the News for kids on CBS Saturday mornings. It'll be voiced by CBS radio newsman Christopher Glenn.
In the News, the bus of the future. I'm Christopher Glenn with Bus Problems in the News.
And back in time to this time in 1964, as the New York World's Fair opens, there's a big buzz about two of the attractions, each produced by Walt Disney. One of them is called It's a Small World. The other is the Carousel of Progress, presented by General Electric. It's an incredible look at how electricity changed the times right up to now in 1964 with color one, as Dick Clark presents the first of many bloopers specials on NBC TV.
Tonight, it's the all-new return of TV's Censored Bloopers. With your host, Dick Clark, and special guests, Suzanne Summers with bloopers from Step by Step.
With more at manfromyesterday.com.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 a.m. The station that leaves no listener behind.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. Even the president uses a cheat sheet. A photo revealed President Biden using a cheat sheet Wednesday during his press conference with the president of South Korea. The sheet of paper in Biden's hand included the name of the Los Angeles Times reporter he called on first. Melting snow in Minnesota is threatening communities along the upper Mississippi with historic flooding. Meanwhile, a severe storm system is threatening millions of people across the South. Wednesday, the severe weather pounded parts of Texas with baseball-sized hail and left more than 5 million people under tornado watches across East Texas and Louisiana. Meteorologist Bill Caron says the threat isn't over.
Tomorrow, a new storm system forms and heads into areas of Texas. A few tornadoes are possible, but large hail is once again the biggest threat.
A massive multi-state manhunt across the South is intensifying. Katie Beck reports a sheriff said they feel confident they're on the right track to finding those individuals after 5 days on the run.
They did see some surveillance footage of one of those inmates in and around the Houston area from Sunday morning, but they said there are 7 different law enforcement agencies all doing their best to try and track down leads and find the remaining inmates. 3 inmates remain on the run after escaping from a Mississippi jail over the weekend. 4 initially escaped, but police say one is believed dead after a shootout with cops. The escapee stole a county-owned truck, which was later found abandoned in Texas. There's a campaign underway to save AM radio after several U.S. automakers announced they would remove the dial from some of their newer models. Florida Senator Rick Scott is receiving emails from concerned listeners and says he's paying attention.
Absolutely, we ought to be keeping AM radio in our cars.
Scott says we have to do everything we can to create opportunities for people to communicate. The National Association of Broadcasters points out that more than 80 million Americans each month depend on AM radio to cover weather alerts, news, and even high school football games. You can text the letters AM to 52886 and tell Congress to keep AM radio in all cars and trucks. You're listening to the latest on NBC News Radio.
Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224. Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Big day in Washington today. Budgets, priorities, the morality police. You know, the people who tell us how religious they are, how much their faith is important to them. Well, it looks like they have shown their hand, and they have passed, what is this called? Hold on. The Limit, Save, and Grow Act, otherwise known as Let's Shoot the Hostages Act. Got through the House. Not a squeaker. 217 to 215, which means all the Democrats voted against it, and 4 Republicans voted against it. It's interesting, the 4 that voted against it, though, they're the, Matt Gaetz, Ken Buck, Andy Biggs, that Burchett guy from Tennessee, the crazy caucus. Now, my mind goes into this place of, they got enough votes to pass it. They needed that. But those 4 were given the okay to, you're the crazy ones. You could be against it because we're gonna play this. Now understand, this bill, it's going nowhere. This was we're gonna pander to the radical base, and it's not even far enough for the radical base. I have to wonder, and I wonder when these bills come up, because we do a lot of these performative, posturing kind of bills. I have to wonder if it really mattered how many people would actually vote for it. I think you'd get like maybe 30 or 40 that would have voted for it, because it is that bad. It is that harmful. It is that dangerous. And again, when we talk about budgeting, and I love doing this with my religious folk, budgets are moral documents. It tells me what your priorities are. It tells me who you are without actually telling me who you are because it lines up your priorities. For instance, remember, this is the party of compassion, the party of national security, the party of, hey, there's a photo up with a soldier and a flag. Let's get it. There's them. And yet, one of the things that this does is, and we've talked about this already, is just massive and painful cuts to the VA. Massive and painful cuts to the people that we put up on the pedestal and called heroes. 22% across the board they want. Right across the board. And what does that mean for our veterans? Wow. I mean, it means longer wait times for medical appointments for our soldiers. It means, what was it, like 80,000 job cuts at the VA, they're saying. This kind of massive cuts. Painful cuts. 81,000 jobs lost is what they're putting out. A 22% cut. And it means we're not going to have the people that we need to do the jobs that we have to ensure that people have the care that they need. Now remember, the heroes that we care about, that we called them heroes. We stand at every sporting event. We raise the flag and we clap for them. Again, performative stuff. But when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, this is a priority. 22% cut to the VA? Are you flipping kidding me? Now, Granny, they don't let you off the hook either. 22% cut to the Social Security Administration. And what does that mean? That means more layoffs in that administration. That means, sorry, you're not going to get processed as quickly. People who need disability benefits not going to get processed, and those are way behind. It means less service. It means less help. It means, starving our government. They want to slash food assistance programs. 1 million low-income seniors are going to go without food assistance. It means cuts to nursing home oversight. It just means all of the wrong things. But again, these are the people who tell us, no, we believe in family values. Going to have massive cuts at the border. They're saying if this goes through, 2,000 Customs and Border Patrol agents gone, 11,000 FBI personnel gone, hundreds of local law enforcement positions gone. But again, this is the party of law enforcement, law and order people. And go down the list of all of the things that will be torn apart. But I go back to the reality. The reality is they don't care about you and me. They don't care about working people. This is a performative display of them going after Biden. And Joe Biden saying, look, you spent the money. Increase the stupid limit. Why are you holding us hostage? I get people all the time going, things were so much better under Trump. My 401k. Do you know what your 401k is going to look like if our Republican friends get their wet dream wish? Do you know what this country is going to struggle through because of this? And this is the part that it just infuriates me. Because there are people who go, no, they wouldn't let that happen. They're just negotiating. No, they're not. I said from the beginning, these folks truly want to shoot the message. They want to shoot the hostage. And I could spend all day going through just how bad this, again, what's the stupid name? Listen, save, and grow. I could spend all 2 hours going through how bad this is and how it's going to hurt families, it's going to hurt workers, it's going to hurt communities. And they don't care because they know most working people aren't paying attention. It's angering and it's frustrating. Let's quick go to the phones. I got Kurt from Akron on line one. Kurt, how you doing today?
Hey, good evening, Rick, and thanks for your show. It's always informative and good. I have a question. Doesn't the 14th Amendment cover full faith and credit that basically we can't default on our debts based on the 14th Amendment?
Shh. Come on. No, you're not allowed to say that. Shh. This is a performative display.
So I'm right.
I believe that to be true, and I believe that the debt ceiling is idiotic and shouldn't be there. It's a construct to do just this. It's not about the things that they tell us about trying to rein in outrageous spending. The time when you rein in spending is before you spend it.
It's to pay the bills that, like your credit. I hate to use a Joe McCarthy. I hate to use a Kevin McCarthy example. It's paying down the credit card that we have. That's what it is.
Yep.
And, like someone said today, this debt ceiling is 97% of everything that was before Joe Biden even became president, which is 25% of what Donald Trump racked up for 4 years over a 240-plus year experiment in what we call our representative democracy.
But again, this is, as I said, this is performative. This is about getting people to think it's all Biden's fault.
And also, I'll tell you this, McCarthy's looking at the fact that if we go off the fiscal cliff in June, that's going to be, 700,000 to 1 million jobs lost by the end of 2024? They're looking at that because, that's during the election. We can blame Joe Biden for that.
Yeah.
And
isn't that a shame?
They're looking ahead.
Isn't that a shame that in this day and age you have these politicians who it really is all about them. It's not about us. It's never about us.
Right. And you know how you cure this? I'm going to be dead serious honest how you'd cure this whole problem, because we never heard about debt ceilings during Eisenhower and Kennedy and all these people. You raise the top tax rate back up to 92%, like it should be.
I've been saying it for years. Dig up the good socialist president Dwight David Eisenhower. Then we don't have these problems.
Exactly, and then that's how you cure the debt problem, because we've never until Ronald Reagan, we've never heard of a debt ceiling.
Again, you create a crisis and then you use it to your advantage. Like they
and
say,
you know what? I think
never let a good crisis go to waste.
Rick, exactly, and I think, Rick, you need to write a book or a position paper of some kind and title it "They're Not the Solution to the Problem, They Are the Problem," meaning the current Republican Party.
There you go. Kurt, appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Look, the reality is what it is, and they're showing their hand. This is major stuff. This is going to affect every working person in this country, and it's you. It's me. You know who doesn't get affected by this? The very well-to-do, the people, our billionaire class. This doesn't harm them. This hurts that single mother who needs Section 8 housing. This hurts that single mother, my mother, when I was a kid, to put food on the table, to keep a roof over the head. This is dangerous. This is just incredibly irresponsible. But that doesn't matter to them. What matters is they get to win. And that's the frustration of the moment that I have, because we aren't pushing back enough on this. This is something that should be uniting us. This should be something that should be bringing us together, going, look, stupid, you pay your bills. I say it all the time. I'm a fiscal conservative. I pay my bills. I'm judicious in how I spend my money, and I make sure that I pay my bills. I'm right now reaching out to my conservative friends. Explain to me how it is that you can justify going, yeah, we spent the money, we debated it, we allocated it, it's earmarked for what needs to be done, we've made commitments, we've done all this stuff, but now after it's there, we're now going to balk at paying for it? It's nuts. And again, what these Republicans don't want is exactly what Kurt said. They don't want to tax the very wealthy who have been getting away with robbing our bank for the last 40 years. The reason wages have been stagnant for 40 years, the reason healthcare costs so much, the reason our retirement security has been mugged is because, well, we've got to pay homage to the chair. We got to kiss the rings. When are we going to stop? Want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a lot to get to. This is another one of those moments where, seriously, we're going through this again? But what's different here is these Republicans, this group, this gang, they really do want to take the hostages out. That's you. That's me. That's us. Quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So an interesting hearing today in the Senate on abortion. And again, this is one of those real hot topics that we're supposed to be divided by, where I think the mass of we the people, I think the majority of us, not the attention seekers and the political fundraisers, but the majority of the country, I believe, is right where I'm at, which is I'm not in favor of abortion, but I'm pro safety. I don't want people dying in back alleys. I want people to have opportunities to bring children into this world and want to. It shouldn't be the first club out of the bag, but I want my daughters to be safe first and foremost. And I think most people are that way. And I think people like Ted Cruz understand that, which is why every time I hear them lie, it drives me insane. And he did it today. One of his spiels he went on today was all about the lie. And we've heard this before, but I decided, we've got to play the lie. So here's Ted Cruz. One of the things that caught my attention that I just had to run out.
The current position of virtually every Democrat senator in this body is that abortion should be absolutely unlimited, available up until the moment of birth, and even, shockingly, in some instances, after birth. That partial birth abortion should be fully legal.
Fully legal. Oh, yeah. And he goes on into a whole bunch of other bits. But the part that I had to get to is that, they're a Democrat. Those Democrat, they want abortion to be up until the moment of birth. And you heard him say it, after. See, now that's a new one. That's a new little bit of caveat. Now, I've said this before. Now, my wife and I have 3 children. There were 3 times where we raced to the hospital, one of them at 100 miles an hour. Fortunately, statute of limitations is well past, so I can't be held accountable for that. But at no point did the doctor look up from the sheet and go, which way are we going with this? Seriously, I mean, this is what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that it's, anytime. It's anytime you want up until after now. After now. How far after? I got a 17-year-old. Sometimes he gets on my nerves. Can I go? Is that what you believe? This is how crazy it is. Now, the reality, when you go and you look it up and you actually use some facts, in 73, when the Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade, the general consideration was before 24 weeks. Where I grew up in Ohio, it was before 20. Virtually every state has one of these. Now, what they are talking about these dangerous late-term scenarios where the child's not viable, going to die anyway, and is going to cause harm or death to the mother. What he's saying was, screw the mother. We're so ideological, we don't care about her. And what's interesting is a woman testified today from Texas, oddly enough, Her name was Amanda Zerwowski, I guess. Amanda was evidently has an incomplete cervix. Why I need to know that, I don't know. But evidently what can happen is it can rupture prematurely and it will cause late-term miscarriages. So as she's going through this misery, doctors don't know how to deal with her. I assume they would have aborted the child at that point to save her the misery. They had to wait until she was septic, and finally agreed that she was ill enough, that she was sick enough, that she was close enough to trouble that they could induce labor, and the child then passed away. They could have saved all this pre the Roberts Court. Could have saved this woman all this misery, and now she and a couple of others and a couple of doctors are suing Texas because you need to clarify, how are you going to care for these women and their needs in these moments of where moments matter? But again, it's not about that. It has nothing to do with, they don't care about you or me or Amanda or the child for that matter. It's about the politics. It's about the division. It's to keep us pitted against each other. There's no solutions here. Have you seen any of them come out and say, okay, well, we're going to force people to have children, but we're going to make sure that they get education. We're going to make sure they get fed. What we do know is North Dakota said, no, we're going to make you have a child no matter what, but no school lunch programs because that's not the state's responsibility. How freaking insane is it? And again, this isn't just the abortion issue. You know, a listener sent me this Vice story that this Moms for Liberty group is organizing all around the country. And here in my backyard right now, they're attempting to take over my local school board, which would be the worst thing that my little fair borough could possibly do, was to bring lunatics into the school board. But that's what the Moms for Liberty people are doing. And because it's all about the gays and the trans and the books, got to protect the children. And this Vice article goes into a woman who was evidently, Southern Baptist, finds out her son's gay at church, I guess, goes through all of the things that crazy religious people do around that issue, conversion therapy, counseling, all of that. But it wasn't until she's brought on by these zealots, by these parental terrorists, that she goes, almost off the deep end. Because this is one of I learned this years ago, and this is this is why this issue is kind of important. I'll say, a girl I dated years ago, her brother was gay, and his community embraced us. And I had an opportunity to speak with all of them. And they would tell their stories about how their parents disowned them, how, a couple of them, their parents wished them dead, how, a couple of times, they were homeless and the parents drove by them on the streets. Just some of the worst kind of stories that you could hear that a parent would do to a child. And you go, how is that possible? What parent would do that to their child over that? Or over anything. I mean, I cannot fathom. So part of me looks at these issues that don't affect me personally, but say, what if it is one of my children? What if it is someone that I care about that's being mistreated, like we're seeing all of these zealots demanding that it's their vision of what should be? What would you do with your child? I remember a guy good union guy, good neighbor, fantastic guy. We began talking about abortion, and one of the things is I said where I'm always at. I'm pro-safety. And I said, well, what would you do if your daughter, had to go into the back alley to get an abortion and she died? And he said, this is where my mind just doesn't go. He said, I wouldn't shed a tear. I wouldn't shed a tear for her. How do you deal with those kind of cold and callous people who are doing the things that they're doing? Look, I've got problems around some of the trans issues. I've got problems around some of the things that are going on. But I come at it from a place of, what if that were my child? What if that were someone that I cared about? Would I treat them the same? And what's frustrating is, and I get these emails from people who are just some of the most vile stuff. I can't read on the air because FCC rules, and there isn't enough of it to clean up other than the hatred and the vitriol for people that they don't know. So I keep coming back to this moment. How do we deal in a society where our politicians are the ones who are heeding the rhetoric? Our politicians, the ones who are supposed to help us solve problems, are the ones that are creating more of them. How do we deal with a society where it's not about fixing things, it's about tearing things down and destroying things? It's about tearing us apart. As I say, for me, it's not about red hat or blue hat. It's about hard hat. It's about getting back to work, about moving forward, getting things done. But sadly, with leaders like Ted Cruz, right out and out lying, how do we move forward? Because there are people who believe Ted Cruz said it. A U.S. senator said it. And it's a flat-out lie. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day the Army National Guard seized the Chicago property of Montgomery Ward and removed its chairman, Sewell Avery. The Chicago-based company repeatedly refused to accept a National War Labor Board order to recognize the workers' union and abide by the board-negotiated collective bargaining agreements. After refusing the second board order, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered the Army National Guard to seize the company's central mail order house, retail store, and other related properties in the city. Avery was physically carried out of his office. Wartime no-strike pledges were in effect to avoid strikes or any disruption in war production. From a distance, it looked as if the president had triumphed the cause of labor in forcefully implementing the Wagner Act. Workers of the CIO United Mail Order Warehouse and Retail Employees Union had walked off the job over recognition issues on April 12th. Montgomery Ward officials argued again, as they had 2 years earlier, that they were not engaged in war production, held no government contracts, and that the dispute is not one which might impede the prosecution of the war by the board's own terms. But the government feared strike activity would only spread to other industries in Chicago and elsewhere. Local Teamsters and railway brotherhoods all supported the strike and refused to handle shipments to and from Ward facilities. The CIO union agreed to end the strike on the eve of the seizure. Others in the labor movement called FDR's move a hoax and a device to break strikes and get workers back on the job without any gains. Roosevelt issued a third seizure of Ward's facilities nationwide by the end of the year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Do you find it as charming as I do when some leisure-class corporate chieftain whines that America's working stiffs are a bunch of slackers? We're hearing that now from Wall Street plutocrats, grumping that employees no longer have that old nose-to-the-grindstone, yes-boss work ethic of old-school capitalism that has created such fabulous wealth. Of course, wealth for whom and work for what are at the root of today's questioning of the old culture and structure of work. But the grumpers don't want to hear that, so they simply carp that America has gone soft. The latest high-flying scolder is Stephen Ratner, the Wall Street huckster who was fined $6 million in 2010 for running a kickback scheme and banned from investment banking for 2 years. But now he's back in the financial hustle, feeling free to chastise you for what he sees as your lack of hustle on the job. In particular, Steve is peeved at you work-from-home people, asserting with no actual evidence that you're not really working. He claims it will inevitably lead to a lower standard of living, a standard he measures strictly in money, not quality of life. Indeed, he says that your life should be work, pointing with envy to China's 996 system, a grinding ethic of expecting people to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. Then Ratner offers a grand solution to dissuade work-from-home arrangements: housing. Why, he asks, have a big majority of European workers already returned to their offices? Simple, he says. Most people there live in small apartments and houses, making stay-at-home work less comfortable. Voila! Put America's workers in tiny houses and office space will fill up. This is Jim Hightower saying, see, life is simple if you view it from the heights of Wall Street. Thank you, Steve. Now, go away.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So for years, we've been talking about, just how biased our Supreme Court under the leadership of Chief Justice John Roberts has become. And look, because the vast majority of decisions we know go towards the toward the moneyed interest. And I've been saying, just for a long time that workers, all they want is a fair shake. We want a fair shake from our high court, and we're not getting it. So the question is, with all the recent disclosures around Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, and now you've got Chief Justice Roberts saying he's not going to come and testify in front of the Senate, how can working people get a fair shake when our court appears to be bought and paid for by the very wealthy? And that's why I've asked Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse to come share some thoughts with us. Senator, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So, this is where my mind starts. Let's start here, Senator. I mean, average everyday working people just want their court to be fair, want to get a fair shake in front of the court. How can we have a system where, our justices are being wined and dined and vacationed and flown around by the very wealthy and powerful when working people don't have that kind of access?
Well, the problem is that billionaires do have that kind of access, and they have been working it. Highly motivated billionaires, I should add, have been working it to exert control over the court in a whole variety of ways, from being in the background as that Federalist Society list was put together, to advising Trump on which judges he should pick off the list, to funding the ads for the nominees who were chosen, to sending flotillas of front groups into the court as what they call amici curiae, friends of the court, to write briefs telling the court what they want them to do. So the pattern of all of this overlays in a very unpleasant way with the pattern of billionaire influence and generosity and secrecy around the Thomas gifts.
Yeah. Now, just not too long ago, I think it was the Center for American Progress did a study of the cases before the court, and they found that whenever the Chamber of Commerce puts an amicus brief in, to your point, that they win more than 70% of the time, which is where I keep saying, our court seems to be so biased on the side of the moneyed interests. And look, this kind of stuff doesn't give the court any more credibility. And you would think, being, the high court of the land, the Supreme Court, that you would take that a little bit more seriously than what we're finding out.
I did a published report years ago that looked at the 5-4 decisions of the court, where the 5-4 broke along partisan lines. And in virtually every one of them, there was a very obvious right-wing, big Republican donor interest in the case. And so we dug in a little bit further and looked at the outcomes. And of the, I think it was 73 cases that were 5-4 partisan and had a big right-wing donor interest implicated, the score was 73-0.
Wow. 73-0?
73-0. Every single 5-4 partisan case with an identifiable right-wing interest in it went for the identifiable right-wing interest.
So this just goes back and solidifies my view that working people don't have a chance. Because one of the things I talk about all the time here, I fear this court is moving us back into the direction of the Lochner era, where there are no laws that can protect working people, no minimum wage laws, no maximum hour laws, no safe working condition laws, none of that stuff, that we end up back in in kind of an oligarch-run country where the court is no friend to working people. So I'm listening to you say this, and man, we're steamrolling towards that.
I think the record of the court gives plenty of evidence for your thesis, and it only got worse when they went from 5-4 to 6-3, and whatever moderating effect Justice Roberts could claim to have was evaporated by him no longer being essential to a majority.
That's an interesting question. What's this going to mean to the Roberts? Because Roberts is a guy that I think legacy matters to him. This is going to tarnish his legacy for I think forever. I think this is going to be what his legacy will be. Just how corrupt they appear.
Yeah, my take has been that Roberts will do whatever the big donors expect and want, up to a point where the move is so sudden, so dramatic, so drastic that it risks damaging the reputation of the court. Thomas and Alito are just like him up to that last point, but they don't care very much about the reputation of the court. They just want to get the job done for the donors that put them there.
What do you say? What do you say, Senator? I had a bunch of people tell me that the whole system's corrupt. It's all bad. This isn't just them. I'm making much ado about nothing. How much of this is this is just how the game has always been played, or are we taking this in the wrong direction?
Well, I would say, first of all, I think dark money has completely rotted out Congress on issues that are important to the big dark money donors. So there are issues in which, I think some general skepticism about Congress and politics is appropriate. And the problem with that is that, members of Congress have been corrupt forever. Special interests have had improper influence forever. But the court has usually been exempt from that. The court has often been a check on that kind of behavior. And what you've seen recently from the Roberts Court is they've completely thrown in with the anti-democratic, oligarchic, Republican big money forces in case after case after case. And that's what's discouraging to me, because the court's supposed to be the place where you get a fair shake. And also, the court's really hard to repair if it's gone bad, because it's protected from political influence without any exemption for political influence that's designed to clean the place up.
Right. Now, do you have any faith in John Roberts that he's going to conduct an investigation and that we get to the bottom or any resolution to this? Because I don't. I look at what happened with the Alito leaked document. I have very little faith in this institution, and I think a lot of working people share my skepticism. Do you have any faith that he'll do it? And if he doesn't, you as part of the Judiciary Committee, what are you guys going to do?
I asked him to undertake an investigation of the Thomas incident, and he referred it to the Judicial Conference, which is other federal judges. He's the only Supreme Court justice in the group, who then referred it to their Financial Disclosure Committee. And what's weird about that is that 11 years ago, a similar set of concerns were raised about gifts by Harlan Crow of yacht travel and jet travel to Justice Thomas. And they went also to the Judicial Conference, and from it to the Financial Disclosure Committee. And we have so far been able to determine no sign of there ever having been any outcome or decision.
So what you're telling me is don't have any faith in whatever investigation comes out of this. So which means that you as a legislator...
We need to look at that. We need to find out what happened, and if this is going to be if nothing happened and the investigation just got buried in the Financial Disclosure Committee, and now the second investigation has gone to the same place, then we need an understanding of how that works, what goes on, and who's pulling strings.
Now, I understand you guys are going to have a hearing on June 2nd that Roberts was invited to.
May 2nd, yeah.
What are we expecting to come out of this? What are we hoping for?
Well, Roberts has declined to attend, so we have a panel of experts on judicial ethics who will come in and share their views. I expect what is likely to come out of it is the obvious. They will confirm that if you have a code of judicial ethics and a bunch of ethics statutes that the justices are nominally bound by, but there's no ref to blow the whistle if they break the rules, they're going to figure that out pretty soon, and they're going to come up with some pretty eccentric views of what the rules and the statutes say, and it's very hard to work through that problem, and that will help build the case, I think, for a statutory code of ethics for the Supreme Court with a statutory method of inquiry, examination, determination, and enforcement.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. If you want to check out his website, we'll get links out at the social media how you can do that. I got a question. Ed Markey, senator from Massachusetts, called for Thomas's resignation. Are we on board with that? I mean, is there any way that this, rises to the level of him being ousted? Because I got a lot of my left friends going, we need to impeach, we need to do all this thing, he's going to go. I don't see that happening, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I'm trying to operate in the world of the possible, given that we have a House controlled by the Republicans who are in turn controlled by the same donors who put these judges on the court. So there's not going to be an impeachment under Speaker McCarthy. And, we couldn't get votes to convict on an impeachment against Donald Trump after all he did, set aside Clarence Thomas over this. So I don't think whether it's merited is a separate question. Impeachment is simply not feasible. I think that the way we're going to make progress here is by continuing to put a harsh spotlight on the uniquely peculiar misbehavior of the Supreme Court and provoke the other federal judges who are not on the Supreme Court, who have to abide by the Code of Ethics, who are subject to investigation and review if there are allegations against them, to get them to the point where they say, okay, enough, you guys, we're not going to put up with this any longer. And the pressure will come from inside the judiciary.
So you think they're going to police themselves? I'm not a big fan of policing themselves. I think there has to be some legislation. If they're not going to oversee themselves and be able to do it, there's got to be something that puts them in this place, which is, brings us to the legislation that you're moving on.
I've got the bill for that.
The Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act, SCERT Act. I don't know why we don't already have something like this in place, but tell me about it.
Well, we've always trusted the Supreme Court to police itself, and there have not been instances of misbehavior of this variety in memory. Justice Fortas was involved in far less troubling circumstances and resigned from the court. But these guys don't want to resign. They're on a mission, so we have to deal with them. And the bill would set up they'd have to adopt code of ethics. They'd have to set up rules of procedure for having themselves investigated by investigators and by, like staff attorneys who do it in the lower courts. There'd have to be a determination. Other judges would make the determination, so it stays within the judicial branch. And then they'd also have to clean up with respect to gifts and hospitality. They'd have to clean up about recusing themselves from cases, and they'd have to require better disclosure of these amici curiae, the friends of court briefs, where the billionaires send in front groups who they funded to tell the judges what to do, and the justices, I should say, and the justices don't bother to inquire who's funding the front groups. They just allow this whole charade to continue.
Yeah, for me, you're going through this again, and it all comes back down to the money, doesn't it? It comes back down to all this money that we've given a handful of people, which I then come back to where I'm usually at on these issues is it's time we start taxing these people and using that money in a much more productive way to ensure that not just our institutions are sound, but our country's sound. It just sounds like this is a tax the rich moment for me as well.
Yeah, and the role of huge amounts of money in all this I've described it as a noxious cocktail of creepy billionaires, phony front groups, dark money millions, amenable justices, and secrecy. That is not a good combination really anywhere, and it's certainly not a good combination in a court. And the problem is that a vicious cycle has developed in which those forces take over the court, and then the court supports creepy billionaires, phony front groups, dark money millionaires, and secrecy. And that cycle has to be broken and reversed.
See, for me, this is a moment where, I don't care which hat you've got on. I don't care if it's a red hat or a blue hat. I'm going to steal Rupert Murdoch's line. It's not about red or blue. It's about green. This is something that should unite all of us across party lines, because having a Supreme Court that is, well, less than supreme and not above suspicion of impropriety is not good for the country. This should be something universally across party lines. We want to make sure that is cleaned up and made, I guess, wholesome again.
Yeah, and I think it's a tell when it's not just elected politicians talking about it, but when it becomes more of a topic among other judges. And what I'm hearing is that it has become a topic among other judges, and they're really quite sick of what they're being obliged to have to swallow from the Supreme Court.
Because it makes them look bad too, I would think. I mean, it makes the whole system look bad.
Yeah, it makes the whole system look bad, particularly when the excuse of the Supreme Court is, oh, we're not breaking any rules here. This is the way the rules are. We're living within them. And regular judges look at that and say, that's ridiculous. That is completely not true. If you were actually subject to enforcement of the rules, you'd know that wasn't true, because we couldn't get away with this. There aren't Circuit Court of Appeals judges taking $500,000 vacations from billionaires. They aren't Circuit Court of Appeals judges rigging the rules so that they can ask the owner of a resort for a vacation and then take it and keep it secret as personal hospitality because the owner of the resort invited them personally, even if they don't know the person. Stuff like that, there's just no way that's credible in any other court.
No, and here's the thing, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older. I'm old enough to remember when this was wrong. I'm old enough to remember when this would have been something that would have outraged everyone until someone had to resign. I'm old enough to remember.
Like Dave Fortas did.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that this is something that we shouldn't want, and not something that's based on politics, right or left, but right or wrong. And this is wrong to me. It smells of wrong in every way. So the last line of questioning I've got for you is, how do we pull people around to remembering that this is wrong? Take off the red hat, take off the blue hat. This is about the green, to steal from Rupert.
Yeah, I think constant exposure to the facts of what is going on is really important. I think Roberts and the Federal Society of Justices on the court are hoping for the next big news cycle to blow this away and they can go back to previous ways of doing business. The last episode in which Clarence Thomas didn't report his wife's income from the right-wing front group, the Heritage Foundation, was back in 2011. And here we are in 2022.
Yeah.
Back then, he was accused of taking gifts of yacht travel and jet travel from Harlan Crow. Here we are in 2022 having to relive it. So I think this time we just need to stick with it and make sure we don't let it get away from us and keep the pressure on and hope and pray that either a glimmer of conscience in Chief Justice Roberts or pressure from the rest of the bench gets a cleanup.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is where we'll finish this. Average working people like me, average people listening to this program know that if you lie on a form, there's consequences. If you do the kind of things that he's being accused of, there are consequences. And sadly, there will be no consequences for Clarence Thomas other than a black check on his record down the line. That's what I think. That's what infuriates me, Senator.
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of people who are state and local employees as well, I was on a phone call and a caller said that she was I think a state employee, maybe a local municipal employee in West Virginia. And she had to report when she went out someplace and they served lunch, and it was like a $5 lunch. And she had to go through all these, reports about the $5 lunch that she got. And, here's a guy who's taking yacht trips and private jet trips, and having his mom put up rent-free in a house that a billionaire owns. The whole thing is just unacceptable to regular people.
I'm right there with you. Senator, I appreciate the time. I look forward to the hearing on the 2nd. I hope you'll come back and keep us up to date on how this is going down the road.
Will do. Gladly, Rick. Thanks for the attention to this.
Thank you so much, Senator. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Whitehouse.senate.gov, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that he's doing. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day the AFL-CIO held a Jobs Now rally in Washington, D.C. A painful recession had pushed unemployment in the U.S. to 9%. Many workers across the nation thought the Ford administration was not doing enough to address the needs of working families. 60,000 people, many of them union members carrying banners representing their unions, gathered in RFK Stadium. There they heard speeches, including one from Senator Hubert H. Humphrey, who had served as vice president under Lyndon B. Johnson. His speech described the devastating impact of unemployment. Senator Humphrey said, "Our nation must recommit itself to the goal and the promise of full employment, a job for every American who is willing and able to work. Perhaps we would get bolder action and more compassion from this administration if some of its top advisors had a little taste of unemployment themselves. Perhaps they would know what unemployment is. It's drawing your last unemployment check with no job in sight. It's sitting in the dark to save on the light bill. It's making shoes last another month and driving on bald tires. It's eating a little less so the kids can eat a little more. It's facing eviction because you can't pay the rent or meet the mortgage. It's borrowing from your brother-in-law or letting your insurance lapse. It's facing yourself in the mirror and asking why and how much longer. It's wondering how a nation this rich, this enterprising, this great can let more than 8 million Americans who want to work and need to work go without work. Some protesters rushed the stage at the rally, causing it to end early. But his questions still remain. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I look at this, and the angering part of all this is they do it right out in public, right out in front of us. And I've been screaming about this for years. I mean, Senator Whitehouse brought up the fact that, back in 2011, you had, I think it was on 60 Minutes, actually, that Clarence Thomas was talking about all the gifts that he had gotten and all, driving his big RV and the money for Ginny to go work at the Heritage Foundation and do all the Tea Party stuff she did. Because, hey, access to a sitting U.S. Supreme Court justice gets you kind of a high-paying gig. But it's even more than that. I mean, it's not just Thomas. Understand, it's all of them. It was, what did the one Times report say? Scalia took more than 250 subsidized trips. In fact, the one he died on, where he died, he was on one of these subsidized trips. He was on a hunting ranch owned by some guy named Poindexter. And you go, why? Now, Scalia used to whine all the time that he believed he was underpaid. But I guess you throw in the perks, Stephen Breyer, they say, took more than 225 subsidized trips from 2004 to 2018. And look, the numbers are all there. This isn't, it's what they've been doing for a while. But it's gotten really just completely out of hand. And one of the things that the Times pointed out is that they hold these black tie events and they trot these justices around and, to get access to them. And they hold an annual black tie dinner where the ticket is at least $5,000 to get in. How many working people got $5,000 to go to a rubber chicken dinner? How many? None that I know of. These are the rich and powerful. These are the special interests that we now have a historical court, a Supreme Court historical society that raised last year, according to the Times, $6.4 million from special interests and groups that have business in front of the court. Because why else would you go other than to get that 5 minutes to talk with the justice? Hey, my guy, I go back to what I said before. I've had friends who have served in Congress. They all tell me the same thing. No one's ever bought my vote, but they buy my ear 15 minutes at a time to lobby their issue. So when I call them and ask for money, they go, yeah, I'll give you money, but I got this problem. And to get the money, you got to listen to the problem. And eventually you come around to their way of thinking. Because if you don't help them with their problem, guess what happens? No more money. And this is where money in politics is the problem. And the sooner that we wake up to that reality and rein that in, especially from all of these right-wing think tanks and these front groups, and look, there's a little bit of that on the left too. I'm not naive to that fact, but the right does it so much better. The corporate interests do it so much better because they've got so much more money. I know George Soros, but for every George Soros, there's 20 right-wing billionaires who are funding, for the love of dogs and puppies. And it's got to stop. That's why I'm glad to see someone like Sheldon Whitehouse out there fighting the good fight. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
The Environmental Protection Agency will call for restrictions on all future and existing power plants that run on coal or natural gas.
Biden EPA to launch new landmark effort to limit carbon pollution.
Climate change